Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Engage Africa Foundation Festival 2023. I am Chika Jones with Engage Africa Foundation, and today I am joined by Dr. Chibuzo Opara of Drugstock. I have been with Engage Africa Foundation for a couple of years. I work in the tech industry during the day and the creative industry every other time. And in this session, we're going to be discussing research, development, and innovation in Africa. The aim is to examine the various ways research and development and innovation helps move healthcare forward in Africa. And we will be focusing on Drugstock, and there are many plans today, and also Dr. Chibuzo Opara's work. And now to talk about the guest himself. Dr. Chibuzo Opara is a co-founder and the CEO of Drugstock. Drugstock is a cloud-based platform for the distribution of verified quality pharmaceuticals in sub-Saharan Africa. Dr. Chibuzo previously worked with the World Health Organization, the World Bank, Nigeria's Sovereign Wealth Fund, the European Agency for Health and Consumers, and the International Finance Corporation in the fields of healthcare financing and supply chain management. He comes to this conversation with a wealth of experience, and we look forward to having him. So let me say welcome again, Dr. Chibuzo Opara. We are glad to have you here.
Same here. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me,
so
Chika.
Much. Thank you so much. We know you're very busy, so we appreciate you taking the time to do this with us. So we'll start with Drugstock. One of the questions we have is, what is Drugstock's vision, if you were to put it in your own words? Yeah.
So I think the driving force behind establishing the company was to tackle what we see and saw at the time as the fragmentation in the pharmaceutical supply chain space. And our vision is to ensure that, we become the largest last mile pharmaceutical distribution platform that has leapfrogged over these infrastructure gaps and is able to bring quality pharmaceutical medication at the right price to individuals and healthcare touch points and systems that need it in Africa and possibly beyond.
Yeah, from Africa to the world. That's a very clear vision. Thank you for articulating it for us. So the other question I have, and it might be a bit premature, is how close do you think you are to that vision, to achieving it?
That's a very good question. In terms of how close, I like to look at it in several ways. I think that, first of all, I think it's a moving target. The population keeps expanding and, infrastructure keeps changing. When we started, the gap in the space was a lot, and there were a lot of issues that, bedeviled the space. Fast forward 5 years, a lot of things have changed. I think we are not quite as close as we would have liked to be and we would want to be. But then again, I think the space is one that is also demonstrating some interesting, evolution. And I think that the next 2 to 3 years are going to be very interesting in the space in terms of how this happens. With the introduction and acceptance of technology, there are different ways that people react. The vision remains the same. The mode to do it, the medium, and the resources or technology that you use to achieve it is changing. So it's very interesting, that journey, and we're quite excited about the next 2 or 3 years in the space.
Thank you. I think we have someone else. I'm not sure who. Onye, is that from Drugstock?
Yes, she's our media person.
Okay, so I've clicked admit, and I think we should be having the second guest from Drugstock here in a bit. Welcome, Onye. It's good to have you here, and thank you for joining us. Um, you might be muted if you're speaking. I'm just going to give that a few seconds. Okay, I guess while we wait for a year, please feel free to butt in at any time when we'll move on. So the second question we have is, so when Drugstock was starting out, were there any companies that you saw in the same space doing similar things?
At the time we started, I didn't realize or see any company at the time that was doing something remotely close to what we were doing. I think fast forward down the line, there are a number of, companies in the same space, either through migrating into the space or starting out, or things like that. And right now, it's a pretty packed space. There's a lot of interesting companies focusing on different angles. But at the end of the day, it's a huge sector. There's a lot of gap and a lot of infrastructure issues. So I think there's a lot of scope for a lot of people to achieve and do great things. Yeah.
Why do you think it was that while you were starting out? How long ago was that, maybe first of all?
So we started the company, we ran it as a pilot from 2015 for about 18 months. And then round about the beginning of 2017, we kickstarted fully. And this was prior to COVID. The internet was good, but the adoption for technology was not so high, and penetration was not so high. But post-COVID, a lot of things accelerated. So yeah.
Interesting. So why do you think it was that at that time there were no other people trying that? Was it a very novel idea, do you think, or do you have some thoughts around why the space was left dormant at least till 2015?
2015, 2016, there wasn't a lot of, the big IT companies around were Jumia. Paystack was not even a thing. So you had Jumia, you had a few companies from San Francisco. The funding space wasn't really that well developed. Access to capital wasn't great. So there's a few people doing startups here and there, and we kicked it off, and I guess we had run for something like from 2017, we ran for almost 18 months before we were able to raise any seed funding or anything like that. And bear in mind that this was a full almost 3 or 4 years since our pilot, which is not the case today. So I'd say that the market the Nigerian market is huge. I think the market was late to the VC type funding type thing. I think 2018 was an inflection year for a lot of investors coming into the space. But prior to that, I'd attribute the delay in all of, like, a lot of companies coming into the space to just the penetration of technology companies. And, prior to them, people who it would be big budgets, big fundraisers. So it would typically be either exactly, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So it's quite interesting that you say that, because one can see from your answer the way the ecosystem kind of affects each other, even when they're not directly in the same kind of industry or in the same space. When we have more people doing things in a wider way, it kind of allows it for others to come in. Thank you very much for that clarity. So the other question we have kind of goes into government agencies. So Nigeria, for example, has NAFDAC, whose job is kind of to ensure quality of food and drugs. Do you see the role they play, and how does that interface with Drugstock from time to time? What do you think of government agencies like NAFDAC and the work they
Yeah,
play in ensuring better pharmaceuticals?
I mean, these are regulatory agencies, and they play a strong role in regulating the space. We're regulated by the Pharmaceutical Council, and NAFDAC regulates the entry and registration of pharmaceutical products into Nigeria. And for us, every product that we carry on our platform is NAFDAC registered. It's something we mandate every company, and every country we go into is one that we would work with the regulatory authorities to ensure that whatever product is on the platform is registered. And so primarily the regulators carry out that function first, and then before we list these drugs, so people are not harmed. We also carry out our own certification checks and things like that, but we start first of all from the NAFDAC number. And the Pharmaceutical Council regulates the space where we run our fulfillment centers. So it's quite a regulated industry in terms of, so we work closely with these agencies to ensure that, patients and the supply chain is kept safe and wholesome.
Oh, that's quite good. For the first time I'm hearing of the Pharmaceutical Council. Could you maybe speak a bit more about how they are different from NAFDAC, very specifically, or how they interface with you, maybe the structure with Drugstock?
So think about it like this. NAFDAC is the product, so the pharmaceutical tablets and all that. Then Pharmaceutical Council is space. So wherever you're going to store these products. And the businesses and the stakeholders who run the product.
Oh, that makes sense. Thank you very much for clearing that up. We're then going into, and I think this kind of affects the earlier question. What's kind of the verification process for Drugstock? Let's say I know you said the first thing is NAFDAC, obviously the first point of call. Let's say I sell a certain kind of drug and I want it to be listed on Drugstock. What's that verification process like? Maybe from start.
Sorry, I lost you for a bit. You said what?
Yeah, let me go again. So what I'm saying is, let's say, for example, I sell a tablet or a drug or a particular medicine. And I know you say drug a lot. Maybe that's also Nigerian English. But yeah, medicine. I sell medicines. So what's the verification process from the entry point? If I'm coming to meet Drugstock, what do I have to do first? And what's kind of the process like to get people on board?
If you are a pharmaceutical company, so the first thing you do obviously is when we onboard pharmaceutical companies, we carry out a number of checks of the company, and when the product is being onboarded, we onboard per product. We don't just onboard a company and then you can put whatever you want. So when the product is being onboarded, when the company is being onboarded, we collect basic information, registration, all that due diligence check. But we onboard the product, and when you're onboarding the product, what we collect is your certificate of analysis to ensure that your product per batch is certified according to, the production process is done properly according to the standards you've submitted and things like that. So we look at your certificate analysis per batch and we store those. We also run some independent check on samples for products, some of the products that come through as a control measure on our own too. So these are some of the checks we carry out. In addition to this, we do an audit, a documentary audit. So end-to-end products in our system, we make sure the documentation and all of that is complete, and done and up to date and done pretty well. We also have, we enter all these by barcodes and QR codes and all that, so we're able to track end-to-end. We call any batch or trace any batch that we want or has an issue. We're also certified by the ISO 9001-2015 for good distribution practice and quality management services. We deploy a number of systems in place, Sigma 6 and all that, to ensure that we have, proper storage, handling, and dispatch standards, transportation, things like that, temperature control. We monitor temperature excursions. All of that go into handling of the product so that the product is safe for consumption.
Such an extensive process, and I think it makes sense given the space in which you're in. We have a question around storage, which you mentioned, but I think I'll just keep that for later. And if we were to talk about pharmaceutical companies in Nigeria, and maybe Africa by extension, do you see a significant difference in maybe first quantity, because I think quality is almost like there's no discussion on that. Are there a lot of pharmaceutical companies in Nigeria or in Africa coming to say, well, we want to get on Drugstock, versus maybe outside the continent or outside the country? Do you look at numbers?
We have a fair number of both. So we deal with both. We have over 7,000 products registered on the platform, which is quite a number of local and international companies.
Okay. And do you see, are there any policies? Because I know recently, and in doing my research for this, I saw that the African Development Bank had recently approved the establishment of the African Pharmaceutical Technology Foundation, whose role essentially is to improve research and development into pharmaceuticals in Africa. Are there policies you think should be put in place to kind of support those kind of initiatives and improve? Are there ones you feel very strongly about that not being put in place yet?
So I think when it comes to pharmaceutical research, it's really about put your money where your mouth is. So you have your biomedical research, you have your there's so many, there's delivery research, there's biomedical, what kind of products, there's genetic research that informs pharmaceutical research. There's a lot of space. There's supply chain research, there is clinical drug trial research. So in terms of the spectrum, there's so much and so many places you can play on. And I think it's really one of put your money where your mouth is, because it's not very easy. Most of these research spaces require some level of prior investment into these activities for a while before they yield result. And some of them are high impact, high value type thing. And you might put a lot of money into it and come up with nothing. Some of them are really, extensive, where you can't just invest in biomedical research. You need to be able to have the HR, have the enabling environment for other research clusters. So you might say, for instance, you can't just say, I'm going to do biomedical research where you don't have research around, developing primers or things like that. You might then have to buy everything that you use in terms of your supply chain, your research supply chain. And by the time it comes in here, it's just like, why are you locating one element of it here? So there's a whole landscape type of view to approach it. Say for instance, there was a huge push by a lot of governments in Africa to start manufacturing vaccines. But oftentimes manufacturing vaccines is the end stage of a very long process, or like a huge supply chain in terms of, how do you get the serum? How do you get the bottles? How do you get the primers? How do you get the, there's a whole series of of everything. And then, cold chain storage, cold chain distribution, so all of these oftentimes go into the questions around research. So even before you start throwing policies or mandating policies, it's best to understand where you want to play. But I do think that the place to start is from what is most prevalent in your space, either in terms of opportunities or in terms of resources. And I think from an opportunity point of view, we have people. There's a lot of people who are consuming medication. I think you can do a lot of clinical trial testing. I think that's a huge opportunity for the Nigerian and West African market, especially because a lot of these drugs are also developed for Caucasians, and Africans have somewhat different physiognomies that might interact a bit different, But I think that in terms of the easiest low-hanging fruit policy that you can actually engender, I think we should get a lot of our research institutions to start to, no matter how small the research is, to start to partner with, companies in this space. You'll be very surprised what can come out. It might not be my biomedical research that everybody in the world, you might not come up with the next cure to cancer, but you could come up with simple things that make pharmaceutical products more accessible, safer, cheaper, and it's those things that eventually lead you to develop the economies of agglomeration that sort of happen when you start to bring all these spaces together. So I think the lowest hanging fruit for me is, how do you encourage local universities to partner with businesses? Of course, we're talking about the healthcare space, but the agricultural sector, the educational sector, the oil and gas sector, banking and finance, with all the big fintech and e-commerce businesses happening. I think a lot of these businesses would love to hand out, research to universities and come up with insight into their products, insight into how consumers react to their products or processes, how to make their processes better. And, if these policies came as tax breaks, a lot of people would jump on them. If you told me that, instead of paying X million in tax, I should give the money to the Faculty of Pharmaceutical Services for University of Lagos to research about the best way to, transport a certain drug in the particular conditions that are unique to Nigeria, I wouldn't even think twice about it.
True.
Like I would even
Very
pay
true.
3 years of tax to them.
Very true. That's such an, I think that's such an important point. And when this obviously goes live, I think a lot of people will benefit from that, because even if we think about it from the entrepreneurial space, it might even be as small as the whatever research and development department of the university working with a really small business owner. It doesn't really have to be one large thing.
Exactly.
And like you said, the accumulation, the aggregation of different people doing small things actually then builds up the space. Were you going to say something? Just there.
No. I was just saying, you hit the nail on the head. We don't need to. We need all that biomedical research, obviously, for health security and all that. But it's kind of like saying that we skip all the processes, all of that, to go. No, we need to start from building all these little things, have our faculties, our homegrown faculties, even get used to the fact that, they can do this research themselves. Like, you and I know that most of the research done by pharma is actually contracted out to research institutions They don't do it in-house, except maybe there's something super secretive that they now say, okay, this particular one, we have to internalize it and keep it away from everybody. But most of the time, it's research institutions. So I know that there's at least 10 different things I would love to pay somebody in a university in Nigeria to do. And I just don't see a marketplace for that. It's just too difficult. If I go to University of Lagos, I don't even know who to speak to, that sort of thing. That's my point. It's, if you would make things like this easier and create incentives where people on both sides, the academia will be looking for the businesses and the businesses will be looking for the academia. Yeah.
That's so brilliant. Thank you so much. And so I think it now comes a bit to storage. I know you've spoken about it in passing, but and I put down the storage question. We put down the storage question because we felt like that's something that's a really major part of the work that Drugstock does. But could you speak to us a bit about what the storage process looks like? What are the challenges? What do you think of? And both storage and distribution itself. Or could you speak a bit to that?
I could speak for days on end. So the first thing to understand is most pharmaceutical products are poisons, and they're controlled poisons. They're made in a way that they're supposed to become active when they come in contact with certain conditions which are internal to your body, right? Now, when these products are not stored right, sometimes they start to degrade or become active, such that by the time you now consume them, they're not the way they're supposed to be. And, people start crying, oh, this drug is fake, or this drug is not fake, and all that. We have a very humid environment. Humidity hits 80 and above, except in the north, right? But then even in the north, you have very hot environments, right? Temperatures going astronomically high. Now, a lot of these products are not designed in the tropics, right? So you need to store them right. If you come to our fulfillment centers, humidity, we take that down to, I think, in a space of, we get rid of something like 3 liters per day in a space of, so 3 liters a day in a 5 square meter space, for you to be able to bring the humidity down. And obviously ambient control is something. Now, a lot of the open drug markets don't have this sort of control and space. So from that storage, that's one of the issues. But even beyond that, there's a number of products that you sort of need to pay attention to. And, this varies from product to product. Most people sort of think, okay, there are 2 broad categories of products: the ones I keep in the fridge and the ones I don't keep in the fridge. That's what most people, once you leave the pharmacy and the hospital space, most people are like, I put this in the fridge, I don't put it in the fridge. There's a whole lot of things. There's direct versus indirect sunlight. Some products you can't expose to sunlight. Some products you need to store in dry conditions. Some products you need to store once you mix them. There's certain ways you keep them. There's a reason why some bottles are brown and some bottles are transparent. Some bottles you have to always store in the pack. And some bottles you can't keep on your table. Your table might be, if they say store in room temperature, but your table is in direct sunlight and your room gets heated up to 50 degrees, then that is not room temperature. So there's a number of things that you need to pay attention to when using pharmaceutical products that go beyond just and then obviously the handling is also very important, and things like that. For us, we also see that, obviously these things are stuff that the folks in the fulfillment centers they get trained really well. They're even much better than I am. There's certain products, for instance, you can't store together. You can't store, you can't attract, you can't have food near a lot of these products, because some of these products also, some products attract ants, and you just need to be able to and then there's a whole biologic process that you need to carry out, biologic what's it called, process that you need to carry out to cleanse the area that you're keeping, and the kinds of things that you can't just use any antibiotic to just eradicate. These are things that people consume. So you sort of need to be very careful about how you fumigate and things like that. We can go into so much, but I think for us, the biggest thing for us is the safe storage and retrieval that has to do with traceability. And that is one of the biggest issues, because when you handle a huge amount of inventory, it's easy for it to get misplaced, get lost, mislabeled, taken to the wrong place. And a big thing has to do with recalls. If a certain batch, for instance, gets poisoned and you need to recall it, then you need to be able to know exactly how it was stored and handled and things like that, and be able to say, hey, the batch 001 to 004 should all be recalled from the market. You want to be able to just run that and be like, okay, this was supplied to these pharmacies. You inform the pharmacies say, okay, I've sold 15, and they have records of who they sold it to. They contact the clients and it's pulled back. The client, yeah. So those are the ways that storage is important, both in its content, in its handling, and things like that.
Wow, that's a master class on storage and distribution. Thank you very much. So the other question I have is around cost, right? I know for a fact that cost is a factor in how people decide what pharmaceuticals to purchase. I grew up in Nigeria, and so I know that sometimes we go and this one is this amount, that one is that amount, but they do the same thing, and so we go for the lesser one usually. Does Drugstock have, or is Drugstock thinking of any financing schemes to help people with lower income? Is that something you have on the roadmap somewhere?
So that's a great question, Chika. So we first of all, we work with businesses right now. So we're B2B, so we don't deal with the consumer. But having said that, we have what we call Drugstock Pay. It's an embedded finance product, and we provide financial services to hospitals and pharmacies to enable them afford these products and hopefully pass on these cost savings to their clients and their patients. For us, the important thing is to ensure that these products are accessible. Like you said, no one should have to choose between eating and dying of malaria, or eating or your kid eating and you taking your hypertensive medication drug. And I think a lot of the challenge that you have in the pharmaceutical space is really due to fragmentation and just the chaos of flow in the system. If there all this leads to like a serious amount of inefficiency. However, if these systems were working properly, then you would be able to take a lot of these savings in terms of pricing, costs, and all that, and pass that on to the patient. Think about it like this: if a distributor or a manufacturer or a retailer cannot manage their inefficiency in the system, which may or may not result from their individual or collective behavior, they would usually pass this cost on to the client. So the manufacturer will pass it down, the distributor and wholesaler will pass it down, and the retailer has no choice but to pass it down. If they couldn't survive in business, then there would be no drugs available at all. That would be, so you would either get the product at an expensive product, as an expensive product, or not get the product at all. And we need to, and what Drugstock does in the back end insidiously, so funny that people don't get to see what we do, but what we do insidiously is to keep reducing these inefficiencies to where we're able to get the cost, better to the pharmacy. With some companies, so having said that, so the first thing I said was we're B2B. So a lot of what we do is indirect to the consumer. Then I said we work on a lot of inefficiencies and try to, get these to translate to cost savings and value savings for the end user. The third thing is we work with a number of pharmaceutical companies around what we call market access programs. And these are for patients who are in need of these medication, which may be beyond reach of the average purchasing citizen. And what we do is to work with some of our pharmacies and clients to ensure that we're able to get these products into the hands of people who need them. So market access programs, we didn't invent them. This is something that has always been there in the industry. But because we're a tech company, we're able to better target, because the biggest problem that pharmaceutical companies have is targeting. So we're able to better target these products to people who need them. And yeah.
So thank you so much. And I think Drugstock paid also is I think it's a really great product. I think it's one of those products that can only come if the founder is altruistic enough, because we know how much cost goes into everything that has to do with the business essentially.
Okay,
go ahead.
I think you can say altruism, but at the end of the day, it's also just being pragmatic. We have a consumer and customer base that has, difficulty with low purchasing power. So on our part, it's behooving of us to find ways to get the product into the consumer's hands and very cognizant of the wallet. I mean, we didn't start the company to serve only a section of people living in, the wealthy parts of Nigeria. The idea is to get this product. I mean, if I wanted to do that, I would have just not started a business that is targeting, over 1 billion people. So it's really not altruism. It's just about how do you make this thing work? Yeah.
Thank you so much. Second to the last question actually is, I know you've worked in healthcare financing, supply chain management before you ventured into this space or parallel. Question is, and I know a lot of founders, entrepreneurs have this. What did you not know when you were starting out that you now
Lord.
know? Maybe 2 things that you think would also help other entrepreneurs or healthcare entrepreneurs.
Okay, so that one is a book.
Yes, also please bring out the book. We'll be happy to share it at the end.
I think as a founder, your company is going through different stages of growth. It's important to recognize when the stages change and realize that you are the prime architect for making those stages happen. Might sound like a lot of jargon, but when I look back, it's something that, part of the challenge obviously is when you're speaking to people and they're not at that battle stage that you are in, battle. I use the word loosely. It's hard to conceptualize advice in that, advice comes at different, different people are able to receive that kind of advice because they're at different stages. So I'd say that, it's important to realize when you've outgrown certain things and when you need certain things and when you need certain types of investment, so it's important to have that. It's important for you to get a mentor. Don't get a cool mentor because everybody's talking about the person, or somebody who is like this high flying person. They might not have time for you. Get someone that, people mentor you for different things. You can be a single objective. You can look for a single objective mentor for a particular thing that you see that is a weakness, and you grow with that. You have several mentors for different things. Don't get too much, because then too many cooks spoil the soup. But you need a mentor you want to grow with other people's experience. You don't want to grow with your own mistakes. Don't be too hard on yourself. Realize that you're going to make mistakes. And the secret to winning in life is you make less mistakes than your wins. But you are going to make mistakes, and just accept that fact and move on. Pay attention to your cash flow. That is the single thing that will kill your business, regardless of whatever investment, business idea, success story you have. You need to pay attention to your cash flow. Very successful businesses have tanked because of their cash flow. Very bad businesses or mediocre businesses have survived because they pay attention to cash flow. So, pay attention to your cash flow, and just keep being hungry. Stay active in the space. Just keep chasing that North Star that made you start the thing. For people who haven't started business at all and who are contemplating, so this part that I just talked about is for people who are already running businesses and are entrepreneurs and looking to scale and all of that. Keep learning. For people who haven't started, entrepreneurship is incredibly hard. Entrepreneurship is incredibly hard. Whatever you're going to get into, make sure you love it. Like make sure you have a passion for it. You're not going to you need a reason beyond I want to pay my bills to get up, get out of bed, and take a pounding every day for 2 years before you see the light of day. And then beyond that, things don't get easier once you start making money in terms of revenue. Things don't get easy once you start getting investors. In fact, they become more difficult. It's just like you're so scarred and battle hardened that you just take it in your stride. It's incredibly difficult. The one thing I would say is make sure that whatever you're getting into, you absolutely care about it. Otherwise, you're not going to there's no validation that would make you keep going. You are the primary person to motivate yourself and motivate your entire team. So make sure you really like what you're doing before you start. And honestly, it gets better as you continue.
It does. Thank you so much. That kind of dovetailed into the last question which I had which was what advice do you have for entrepreneurs? So thank you so much for that clarity. You've shared what you know, and you've also given us advice. And this is close to the end of at least the recorded part of this conversation. Are there any final thoughts you wanted to share on Drugstock, on pharmaceuticals in Africa? Is there anything else?
I think I've shared most of what I think about every day. I think the industry is undergoing enormous changes, so watch out for what Drugstock is coming up with next. We have something really exciting that we're going to launch in the next few months. I can't speak to it so as I don't preempt the team, even though I'm very excited about it. So I think the space in itself is an exciting space, and I think I feel very lucky to be able to work on impacting a lot of people's lives in a positive way. I don't think there's a lot of people who are given this opportunity. In terms of I love to do work with entrepreneurs. I love to support entrepreneurs. I volunteer at the Africa Business Heroes thing as in supporting young businesses. I'm always happy to help. I would say that, a lot of what I come in contact with two kinds of people. There are people who are like, they feel they have an idea and they're like, waiting for the right time, the right situation. Like, I'm just waiting for that right moment. And then I'm going to quit my job and jump into this thing. And then obviously you have the entrepreneurs who are struggling. They have a business idea and they're sticking so hard to it and they're trying to trying to get it to work and all that. My advice to the people who are, in the pre-stage is, entrepreneurship is not for everybody. Like I said earlier, you have to really like what you're doing. But when you do get on and you're convinced, and you want to start, just start. You're going to fail so many times that there's no point in failing yourself. Do you get what I mean? Like, can you imagine a baby telling the mother before it comes out of the womb that, Mommy, I'm waiting for the day that the sun is out and, Naira goes back to 100 Naira to $1 before I come out. That baby will stay inside there now. Do you get what I mean? But you just need to start. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. But that's part of the process. That is the beauty of entrepreneurship. For those entrepreneurs who are chugging along, who are, Nigeria and Sub-Saharan Africa, there's never been a time in the last 200 years where, independence time was a great time to be African. But those times, immediately after with all the coups, that was crazy. But now, there's never been a time where you have the perfect confluence of, opportunities in terms of problems and the tools to get something done. And I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, I think it's the right time to push forward. Don't be daunted. We're all going through challenges. See, even the biggest companies. I have a few mentors who run, billion-dollar companies. Everybody's going through challenges. And there's nobody that is not touched. So don't feel you're alone. Reach out, talk to another entrepreneur, speak to a lot of people. Don't stay in your cocoon and die in silence. Reach out to people, talk to people, get a mentor. Just share your journey. Like those days, obviously don't share something super secret, but share your journey with other people, get support. It's important. And my last final message is, take care of your mental health.
Thank you so much. That's super, super clear. We really appreciate you taking the time to do this for us. And I'll stop the recording.